Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're having an adventure.
He looked her in the eyes and whispered, "Never measure wealth by what you see. Measure it by what others cannot see." Dada thought Nura was joking, but she didn't know those were the first words of a secret language, the language of African billionaires. A language no university teaches, a code older than politics, deeper than power. And once she heard it, her life could never be the same again. Because in this world, silence is survival. Trust is currency. And betrayal? Betrayal is death. This is the story of Nura, the billionaire who loved a poor girl enough to teach her the code. And the night she realized love was not the only price she had to pay. The first time Dada heard it, she thought it was nothing more than a whisper lost in the night wind. But Nura leaned close, his voice low, heavy, deliberate, words not meant for ordinary ears. "Never measure wealth by what you see, my love," he said, his eyes glowing like embers in the half-dark. "Measure it by what others cannot see." Dada frowned, unsure if he was teasing her again. "You speak in riddles, Nura?" "Always. What does that even mean?" He smiled, a calm, unnerving smile that only men who had seen both poverty and power could wear. "It is the first line of the language. The secret language." "The secret language of who?" she asked, half mocking, half curious. "The secret language of African billionaires," Nura replied. His tone was neither boastful nor proud. It was simply matter of fact, like the way a fisherman might say, "The tide is coming in." Dada shivered. She was not a stranger to hardship. She had scrubbed floors in other people's homes, traded pepper in markets, even borrowed coins to feed her younger siblings. And here was Nura, once just another poor boy in the neighborhood, now sitting before her in a glass-walled mansion, dressed not in extravagance, but in simple, tailored linen, yet with a presence that screamed wealth without needing proof. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. Nura leaned closer. "Because you are my wife, Dada. And if you're to stand by me, you must understand the code that governs men like me. The language that no university will ever teach you. But without it, even billions can vanish overnight." Dada's heart thumped. She wanted to laugh it off, but there was something about his eyes, sharp, calculating, almost ancient, that rooted her still. He stood, his tall frame cutting a shadow against the chandelier light. Then he turned and said, "Listen carefully. Once I begin, your life will never be the same." It had all begun 2 years earlier. Dada had known Nura as the boy who once carried water for his mother in rusted buckets. He was skinny, restless, always speaking of dreams too big for his pocket. She had dismissed him like many others. But when she stumbled upon him again in Lagos, everything about him had changed. He was no longer the boy. He was a man who moved like the sea, calm on the surface, but with dangerous depths. His cars were discreet, his friends powerful but few, and his words carried a weight that silenced any room. And yet, when he saw Dada again, he smiled as though nothing had changed. "Do you still laugh the same way, Dada?" he asked, as if all his billions meant nothing without her answer. She laughed nervously then, but when he invited her into his world, she quickly realized wealth was not the most dangerous thing about Nura. It was the code by which he lived. One night, weeks after she had moved into his mansion, she finally asked him, "Nura, how did you rise? From carrying buckets to carrying empires." He paused for a long time, sipping his tea. Then he said, "Do you really want to know?" "Yes," she whispered. And that was when he began to speak to her in the language. "The first rule," Nura said now, returning to his seat, "is silence. Wealth speaks, no loud words. Do you know why I wear plain linen and not gold chains, though I can buy 100? Why? Because lions do not roar when the prey is already in their mouth." Dada's eyes widened. "The second rule," Nura continued, "is networks. Not friends, not family. Networks. A billionaire's true language is who owes him and who fears him." Dada leaned in, whispering, "And the third?" He smiled again, that same unsettling calm. "The third rule is patience. Every great fortune in Africa is born not from speed, but from waiting. Waiting for the fall of governments, the rise of currencies, the mistakes of greedy men. She swallowed. And you waited? His eyes locked on hers. I waited for 20 years. Dada felt a cold wave run through her. 20 years? This man had carried hunger, shame, and mockery for 2 decades. Just to wait? She touched his hand, trembling. Why tell me now, Nura? Because, he said, tightening his grip around her fingers, the 4th rule is trust. And I have chosen you, Dada. But, he paused, his voice heavy, can you bear it? Her lips parted, but no words came out. That night, long after he had fallen asleep beside her, Dada sat up in the vast bed, staring at the moonlight that crept through the curtains. The words circled her head like restless spirits. Silence, networks, patience, trust. She realized she was no longer just a wife. She was being initiated into something deeper. A world where money was not just paper, but power, shadow, and blood. And she wondered, with fear rising in her chest, what will it cost me to learn the rest of this language? The next morning, the mansion was unusually quiet. The staff moved like shadows, their footsteps hushed, their eyes lowered. Dada had grown used to the silence, but today it felt different, heavier, like a storm gathering just beyond the windows. She found Nura in his private study, a massive room lined with bookshelves that stretched to the ceiling. He was seated at his mahogany desk, not reading, not writing, just staring at a single envelope before him. Dada cleared her throat softly. Nura. He didn't look up. Instead, he tapped the envelope with a finger. This is worth more than 5 houses in a koi. Yet inside it is only 1 page of paper. Dada frowned. What's written on it? Nura finally raised his head. His eyes were sharp, yet tired. It is a letter from a man who broke the 1st rule. Her chest tightened. The rule of silence. Yes. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. He thought wealth was a song to be sung, a dance to be danced before the world. Now, his fortune is scattered, his family in hiding, and his name, Nura, tapped the envelope again, is written here as a warning. Dada's breath caught. You mean they punished him? Not they. The language punished him. She shivered. I don't understand. Nura stood, his height commanding the room. You will. That afternoon, he took her to a private gathering. It wasn't in a hotel or a government hall, but in an unmarked villa at the edge of the city. Armed men guarded the gates, and their eyes lingered on Dada longer than she liked. Inside, the air was heavy with cigar smoke and quiet conversations. Men in plain clothing sat around long tables. No gold watches, no loud laughter, only murmurs that carried weight like thunderclouds. Who are they? Dada whispered as Nura guided her to a seat. He leaned close. Some of the richest men in Africa. But if you saw them in a market, you'd think they were farmers or clerks. Dada swallowed hard. One man, older with silver hair, rose to speak. His voice was steady, almost casual. Gentlemen, the market in Abuja has shifted. The government is desperate. They will sell licenses at half their worth. We must move quickly. A few men nodded. Others remained silent. Then another voice, deep, commanding, cut through the smoke. Patience. Let the fools rush in. When the licenses collapse, we will buy the ruins for a song. The room hummed with agreement. Dada sat frozen, realizing she was listening not to businessmen, but to generals of an invisible war, where wealth was the weapon and silence the shield. Nura touched her hand under the table. Do you see now? He whispered. Her lips trembled. Yes, but it's frightening. He nodded slowly. Good. Fear is the beginning of wisdom. Later that night, back in the mansion, Dada confronted him. Nura, you speak of silence, networks, patience, and trust. But all I see is power games. Men moving nations like pawns. Where's love in all this? For the first time, his calm broke. He looked at her with something like pain. Love is why I brought you here, Dada. Do you think I would open this world to anyone else? No, I chose you. But now you must choose me fully. Not just the man, but the world he carries. Her throat tightened. And if I can't? He stepped closer, his voice low and grave. Then you'll be swallowed by it. The language spares no one, wife, child, or stranger. Once you hear it, you are already inside. Dada's knees weakened. So what must I do? Nura took a deep breath. You must learn the test of silence. The following week, he gave her the test without warning. It was evening when a sleek black car arrived at the mansion. A tall man in a crisp suit stepped out. His face was familiar. She had seen him on television, shaking hand with presidents. He greeted Nura warmly, then glanced at Dada. Ah, this must be the wife. Beautiful. His smile was charming, but his eyes were calculating. Over dinner, the man spoke casually about politics, about oil, about investments. Then suddenly, he turned to Dada and asked, So, tell me, what has Nura taught you about the business of billionaires? The room went silent. The staff froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Dada's heart pounded. She remembered Nura's words. Silence is the first rule. She forced a small laugh. He only teaches me how to cook jollof rice properly. The man stared at her for a long moment, then chuckled. Smart woman. Only after he left did Nura exhale, as though he'd been holding his breath the entire evening. He turned to Dada, his face unreadable. You passed. She blinked. Pass what? The test of silence. If you had spoken even one wrong word tonight, Dada, it would not have been me correcting you. It would have been the language itself. Her stomach dropped. What does that mean? But Nura only kissed her forehead gently and whispered, One day, you will understand. That night, Dada cried quietly into her pillow. She realized that marrying Nura was no longer just about love. It was about surviving a code she barely understood, a language older and darker than she imagined. And just as sleep began to take her, Nura's phone buzzed sharply on the nightstand. He answered, his face tightening as he listened. Then he rose, pacing the room. Dada sat up. What is it? He pressed the phone to his chest, his eyes heavy with dread. They've broken the second rule. Her voice shook. Who? Nura's gaze locked on hers. A man I once called brother. And if he falls, Dada, he will not fall alone. The call changed everything. For 3 days, Nura was not himself. He barely ate, barely spoke. Dada watched him pacing the study like a lion trapped in its own cage. His calm, that terrifying calm she had grown used to, was cracking. On the 4th day, he summoned her. Dada, he said quietly, sit. She obeyed, though her hands trembled. There is a man, he began, whom I trusted more than anyone in this world. We built empires together. We buried secrets together. But now, he exhaled deeply. He has broken the second rule. Dada leaned forward. The rule of networks. Yes. Nura's eyes burned with something she had never seen before, fear. He has betrayed the circle. And when one man breaks the chain, the whole chain shakes. Her heart pounded. What will happen to him? Nura's jaw tightened. What always happens? The language does not forgive disloyalty. That evening, they drove to an estate far from the city. The air was heavy with humidity, the night sky full of restless clouds. At the gate, guards waved them through. Inside, a long table stretched under a chandelier that glowed like fire. Men were already seated, their faces grim. And at the far end sat the man, Nura's brother. Dada recognized him instantly. She had seen him at the previous gathering, calm and sharp, always the first to speak. But tonight his eyes darted nervously, his hands clutched the table. One of the elders spoke first. You have moved against the circle. You sold what was not yours to sell. The man's voice cracked. I had no choice. My family, your family will pay more dearly for your weakness. Another cut in coldly. Nura remained silent, his gaze fixed on the man. Finally, the betrayer looked at him desperately. Nura, say something. Tell them I am not the enemy. We built this together. The room held its breath. Nura's voice came slow, steady. You broke the chain. You forgot the second rule. And now, I cannot save you. The man collapsed into his chair, his face pale. So this is it? You'll watch me burn. Nura's expression did not change. You set the fire. Dada gripped the edge of her chair, her chest tightening. She wanted to scream, to run, but she sat frozen as the council gave its silent verdict. The meeting ended without another word. When they left, Dada whispered, Nura, What will they do to him? Nura did not answer immediately. At last, he said, by tomorrow, he will no longer exist. Her voice shook. You mean dead? He turned to her, his face shadowed by the passing streetlights. In this world, Dada, death is not the only way a man can vanish. She gasped. Back at the mansion, Dada could not sleep. Her mind replayed the night, the broken man begging, the silence of the council, Nura's unreadable calm. She finally confronted him at dawn. Nura, she said firmly, standing by the window, this world you have dragged me into, it terrifies me. You talk of rules like commandments, of silence and networks, of patience and trust. But where is the end? When does the language stop demanding blood? Nura's voice was tired, almost broken. It never stops. That is why so few survive long enough to tell it. Dada's throat tightened. And me? What of me? Am I to survive this? He looked at her then, his eyes softer, filled with something raw. That depends, Dada, on whether you trust me enough to walk deeper. Because now there is no turning back. Tears welled in her eyes. And if I cannot, Nura walked to her slowly, took her face in his hands. His voice cracked for the first time. Then I will lose the only reason I ever wanted to learn this cursed language in the first place. Her tears broke free. She pressed her face to his chest, sobbing silently. But just when the air between them softened, the phone rang again. Nura's body stiffened. He answered quickly, listening with his head bowed. Then his eyes widened. He shot up, pacing. No, that cannot be not him. Dada froze. What happened? Nura's voice shook with a mix of rage and fear. The betrayer, he is not gone. He has risen. And worse, he has named me. Her heart lurched. Named you? For what? Nura slammed the phone on the desk, his breath coming hard. For everything. The contracts. The networks. The circle. He has broken silence, Dada. She covered her mouth in horror. But the first rule. Yes. Nura cut in, his voice trembling now. And because he has spoken, the language will demand payment. From me. From us. Dada's knees gave way. She sank into the chair, staring at him in terror. Nura, what does that mean? Nura's eyes glistened, his voice heavy as stone. It means, my love, by sunrise, either I disappear, or we both do. And that was the night everything changed. The brother who betrayed the circle has now broken the first rule of silence and named Nura. By sunrise, either Nura disappears, or both he and Dada vanish together. What will happen next? Will love survive the weight of betrayal? Or will the secret language of African billionaires demand the ultimate sacrifice? Don't miss part 2 of this story. It will shake you deeper than the first. Subscribe now and be ready. Asterisk.